Hi everyone, and warmly welcome to the fourth part of the Leadership for Change lecture series. I am Tia, and with me today are my lovely group members Antti, Laura, Bohui, Joona, Bianca, and Haisong. And this week's lecture is about animal rights in a sustainable society, brought us to by Mai Kivelä. Mai Kivelä from Left Alliance is the Parliament member of the Environmental Committee and a former Executive Director of Animalia. In addition to being a member of Parliament and politician, Mai has influenced as an environmental and animals' rights activist for almost 20 years. Without further ado, I will give the floor to Mai. Thank you, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you, and I'm very happy to be here today with you, and especially to talk about animal rights, which is an important issue for me also personally. And I actually made some slides, so I could now try and share them with you. Maybe you can tell me if do you see the first slide now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. And I guess you can hear me also.
Yes.
Okay, good. So today we're going to talk about animal rights and what is the role of animal rights in a sustainable society. And I start with a citation, because I think that when we talk about animal rights, we actually need to talk about us and our values and our views on what is acceptable and what is not, and our relationship to other species in this world. So this is a quote from Birgitta Wahlberg, who is a university teacher in public law at Åbo Academy, Turun yliopisto, and her field of expertise is animal law. And she's also president of the Finnish Animal Rights Lawyers Association. And so I took this citation to reflect with you the theme of this evening, and I think we will get back to this later. But I want to emphasize that this is a complex issue, and maybe how we our practices currently are not maybe so logical and in line with our own values. But let's see what we think. And I will just make sure that you also see that I'm changing the slides.
Yes.
Okay, good. So first, to guide you through tonight's presentation, there are 4 parts. First, I want to talk about our relationship with other species, and then secondly, that what do we mean by animal rights, and what is the problem with the current situation, so why there is a movement and people who has this agenda. And then the third one is the current regulation, so how the animals are regulated in our current law. And then the 4th theme is the linkage between animal rights and other pressing sustainability issues, and why I see that these are quite tightly interlinked. And then, of course, we will have time for questions and discussion in general. And so you already gave a very good introduction about who is speaking today, but just shortly, here is my background. So I'm a first-term MP, and I basically I never believed that I would end up in a politics. It has been a little bit surprise for myself also, but here we are now. However, I feel that the issues which I work are still quite the same. But yeah, I have a strong background in the NGO field, and it has been since I was a little kid that I was very much involved in activism, and especially environmental issues and animal rights and etc. So I don't know, it's just a very big part of my identity. And after that has come the studies and my work history, and finally ending up in the politics. So then we can move on. The Left Alliance, you probably are quite familiar with the parties in Finland, but we are the mid-sized party, and we currently have 16 MPs in the parliament, and currently also we are in the government, and the party leader is Li Andersson, and our slogan is "For all, not for the few." And I personally like to think that also this somehow includes like non-human animals. But if you want to be very short, I would say that we are a red-green party. So we want to combine the ecological sustainable issues with social justice issues. Okay, so then the main theme. And the first part is about us and other animals. And first of all, I'm going to talk about animals and animal rights. And I wanted to start by saying that I know that it's problematic. First of all, it's problematic to make this huge distinction between humans and then all the other species, and use one word like animals to all the other species. I know it's quite blunt, but since it's quite also a reality in our like human societies, I'm gonna use it now. But there is lots of debate about the in the animal rights movement and in the animal studies, that is how actually harmful is this distinction and this using like one word for all the other species. So so I wanted to say that, so that we, even though I'm going to use this distinction now, we know that it's a little bit problematic. But then the second point, when we talk about animals in our society, I want to say that they are at the same time the huge majority, like they outnumber humans, of course, with multiple times, and we are the just quite, yeah, we are not the majority, but at the same time the other species are quite hidden in our societies, maybe except for the pets, but otherwise all these huge masses of animals which we use in our daily lives, and which is our society's, yeah, like this huge amount of this biomass what we use. We basically don't see the animals. We may see the end products, but we don't see the living animals. And then animals are in some sense everywhere, because we use animals in, of course, in our food system. We use them as textiles in our entertainment, and we have companion animals, of course, and in scientific tests, and we make glue out of them. We make car parts out of them, and furniture, and so on. So the animals as a material are quite everywhere. And the current situation is so that if we look about the human history in this planet and our shared history with other species, we are actually now in a situation where we produce and use other animals more than ever in a human history. So it's quite intense, and it's something that we haven't done. Like the modern history is most efficient in using other animals. But at the same time, we also live in societies where people do care about animals a lot. You may, if I give you an example that how strong reaction we get if we read, let's say in social media, we read news about animal abuse, and we get a very strong reaction from people that how wrong they think it is if somebody has mistreated their pet or farm animals or so. And also we have more than ever companion animals. And I would say probably from the people who are listening to this lecture now, probably most of us could point some animal who he or she has shared some part of your life. Like you could maybe name a person who you know that it's not just a biomass, but it's a person with own personality, maybe a cat or a dog or a horse or so, maybe your own, or maybe your parents or neighbors or so. And also when this has been statistics about how much people care about other animals, the numbers are huge. Like the latest Eurobarometer said that like 90% of Finnish people said that we want farm animals to be treated better, and 99% said that the well-being of animals is important issue for me. So even though that I come from the Left Alliance, I would say that this is something that goes beyond party differences or beyond age or geographical, where like it doesn't depend where you live or how old you are or what is your gender. Also there are like lots of people who are passionate about animals, but of course animal rights is not dependent on like personal affection towards animals. But this is to highlight the complexity of the current relationship. So then what we do, and this is not, we classify animals, and this is not, I'm not talking about the biological or classification. I'm talking about this, our normal division that we have pets, and then we have animals in factory farms, and then we have fur animals and wild animals, pests, and then we have animals who we use in scientific experiments, etc. And what is like the root in this, or in this classification is that the treatment and the regulation of this individual animal depends on how we have classified the animal. And the classification depends on how we want to use the animal. So it's not based on some biological or scientific reality or so. It's just that we have made this and we think it's quite normal, but it's not based on science. So it's something like, it's not reality to the animals, but it's like more reality to us humans. And many species can fit multiple categories. For example, rabbit. We can have rabbits as a pet or as farm animals, fur animals, wild animals, and lab animals, and so on. But when we talk about why this classification is important, it's important because what is allowed depends also about this regulation. Like let's say a fox. If we have a fox in a zoo, it has different welfare regulation than if it's a fur animal, fox in a fur farm. And the individual fox doesn't change. It biology, like it's still the same animal, but we think that okay, it's normal that we can have like totally different, let's say, laws. Let's say, for example, how much that individual or animal needs to have space. It can be like, and we can still say that okay, in a fur farm, if you have this amount of space for the fox, it's okay and it's legal. But if you would keep your pet or a zoo animal in the same conditions, it would be like against our animal welfare law. But still the fox is the same, or so if we want to give animals some kind of, like, let's say, minimum standards in order to fulfill their behavioral needs or well-being, then it's quite unlogical that we can make different laws and different regulation based on how we want to use the animal. So where does this all come from? Why do we treat animals as we treat? There are many reasons, and of course, how we act now, we come with all the history and what is the habit and what we are used to as being normal. More, if you don't want to act differently than majority of your peers or people who you live with, then it's easy to act as what is seen as normal, like normal eating or normal behavior. Not many of us would abuse animal in a way what is against our current law, but we can feel that it's quite normal to take part in certain activities which we know that are not maybe very kind towards other animals, but since it's legal and it's normal, it's easy for us to not somehow make it a problem to us. And of course it's natural. This is what we do in many other things also. And then the economical factors are of course quite major issue, especially when we talk about the regulation. We have laws which protect animals, but then we make clauses, or we write them so that, okay, this is not allowed except if you do it because for economical reasons. And then cultural aspects and cultural differences are quite a big and powerful framework. So you know that in different countries we have quite different ethical rules on what is allowed, which animals are okay to be eaten by humans and which not. And also media, literature, movies, these kind of cultural fields can shape how we interact with our other animals. Religion is, if we look at the human history, it has had a major role, and different world biggest religions have, of course, as you know, different kind of guidance towards which animal, which species should be treated in a different way. And then the scientific knowledge on other species. This is something what we have gained quite a lot of knowledge during the recent, let's say, 10, 15 years. We now have a lot of knowledge about other species, their capabilities and so on, which we didn't have still like 20 years ago. And then of course we have individual differences, how interested we are on other animals and so on. So then about the animal rights, and what do we mean by animal rights? First of all, we probably want to ask that why would this be an issue? So I would start from saying that, well, since we know that the animals are not things as a chair or so, we cannot like just treat them solely as other property issues. And that would be the first point. And then the second point is like that we know that animals feel pain, pleasure, fear, joy. So when we know this, we have to take that into account. They possess their own well-being, and that well-being can vary from positive to negative, and our actions affect their well-being. So then it's our responsibility to take that into account. And and the animals have these feelings, and they possess this well-being regardless of this classification I was talking about, and regardless of how we use them. So even though I would say that, okay, in Finland we kill 90 million animals in slaughterhouses and in factory farms every year, it's a big number, and it's so big number that it makes us almost feel like, okay, we cannot, then it's easy to lose the individual into the big numbers, but still they have these individual wills and capabilities and feelings. So I feel that we need to take that into an account. So then when we talk about rights, we probably want to ask questions such as, do non-human animals have intrinsic value, and what is wrong and what is right in relation to other animals, and do they have rights, and if so, what kind of rights they would have, and how should we regulate animals in general, and especially, of course, this massive use of animals. And I try to be, we have lots of different theorists and so on, but I try to be quite, I don't know, simple when I talk about animal rights. I say that they have intrinsic value, and therefore they don't just have instrumental value, which they of course also have, but and I say that animals are individuals, and every individual have intrinsic value, and thus certain rights. And since animals are individuals and they possess their own well-being, I think that they have certain rights, and people due to this have certain obligations towards other animals. And when we talk about animal rights, I talk about the fact that animal has the right to be animal, the rights to this species specific natural behavior. So we don't want animal human rights, but we would need them to have their rights to their natural behavior and to live as is a species specific for them. And of course, I think the fundamental right is the right to live. And then you can say that animals would need or would have the right also to live and death without unnecessary pain and suffering. And when we talk about rights, we can talk about positive rights and negative rights. And by negative rights, I mean that we should like that. Then we should not do animals things that it's very exploitative, like that. Since they are not only instrumental value, it's not an we don't have the right to use them as such. And then the positive right means that it's not only that we would stop doing something harmful, but maybe we would also need to have somehow taken the animal's interest into account. So so it would be also we would have some kind of responsibilities to the well-being and the positive emotions and so on. So then when we talk about rights, there is a long history with animal protection movement, animal rights, animal welfare, and then the endless debate that what's the difference between all these. And again, it's a complex issue, but if you want to be really simple, the animal protection usually means that it's okay to use animals and kill them even in massive amounts, but we should avoid the unnecessary harm like suffering. But still we can base some industries on these exploitative measures. And then the animal rights argument or view maybe somehow questions this whole whole structure, that is it actually, are we allowed to do this, even if we would minimize the pain and suffering, are we allowed to use these live individuals only as an instrumental value? And also I don't know if you are familiar with the word speciesism. It refers that just like sexism or racism or so, there is this kind of like a structure where because of the species, because it like somehow gives us this moral ground to use other species, which we think that since they are not us, we can do stuff to them which we wouldn't do if they would be part of us. And animal ethics is thinking about all these questions, but maybe the bottom line is that, well, animals are morally relevant, and since we people are capable of moral thinking, and in some sense our actions are based on some kind of like moral thinking, and our laws are some at least in some way based on our moral thinking, then since animals are morally relevant, we should include them into these moral discussions. And animal studies then is studying all these questions I have been actually talking about now, and the relationship and so on. And when we talk about law, we understand that, okay, humans have needs. We might have needs to use animals, but when we talk about animal rights, we say that, okay, well, the animal also has needs, individual needs, maybe like the need to live and so on, need to take care of their own babies or so on. And since now we always put the needs of the humans, or not always, but most of the time we put the needs of the humans above the needs of the animals. But when we want rights for the animals, we say that, okay, we have to weight these. We have to like think that in which situations the needs of the animal should weight more than the needs of the humans. And I would say that this is a normal thing in our legal system, that we have different rights, and then in our legal system we weight these different aspects, that okay, and then we somehow combine them, because also the human rights are not, you have to somehow, well, the COVID-19 situation is quite a good example on we are all the time in a situation where we have to wait that, okay, people have freedom of movement, and then we have the right to live, and now we have to wait that how much we can somehow restrict the other right in order to make this other aim or right to be fulfilled. And animal rights people say that, okay, these needs of the animals should be taken also in this kind of like moral judgment, that we have to wait that when in which situation the needs of the humans are more important. And maybe the answer is not so that there is never justified situation to use animals, but we should maybe make it a little bit more strict. And then the last point is that the animals have rights which are relevant to them. So the animals, let's say cows, for example, or dogs, they don't need human rights. They don't need rights which are relevant to us, but they need rights which are relevant to them. So basically, which would allow them to live their lives as is species specific or natural behavior for them. And there is a lot of studies, of course, about this, that what kind of behavior is needed. Let's say cows have different natural behavior than fox and so on. So they are species specific in that sense, that they need different. I want to be concrete, so I say that, for example, a mink has this natural need to swim, and then the fox has a natural need to dig the ground, and neither one of these is now met with current fur farming, and so on. Okay, then the regulation. So currently, the frame law is the Animal Welfare Act, and it's from the 1996, and it's outdated. And now we are making a new Animal Welfare Act, which should be ready this year. And the Welfare Act is the objective is to protect animals from pain and suffering in the best possible way. It's stated in the law, and then it also to promote the welfare and the good treatment of animals. And still, I think that the aim and the statements are quite good already now, but we are not met with these aims, because we still allow certain businesses to happen, and certain procedure and so on. So we still have the biggest problem is that we are not enabling the animals to express their natural behavior. For example, that the movement, which is a very basic behavioral need for all animals, is limited due to certain cages and so on. For example, with pigs, these anti-rotation cages where the pig cannot even move, or the tie stall barns for cows where they are attached to the barn from their head, so they can move very minimally, and it's very, very bad welfare problem for the animals when you are not allowing the animal to move. And the second thing is, for example, that it's still allowed to do these painful procedures without appropriate pain relief and pain management, such as the spudding of calves and the castration of pigs. So then we have totally normal that you can may do or carry out these painful things in our food production, which is very painful for the animal. And then we have bad breeding practices. This is a big problem also with pets. We have problems with monitoring the animal law and let's say, for example, the slaughterhouses. There are lots of these mishandling and things we can report, but we should, of course, be better with monitoring and also also we have the specific problems in our current law, just that all animals still don't have the continuous access to drinking water. For pets, we would need the registration and identification marking, and so on. We should ban the dolphin areas and so on. But I want to highlight that the special blind spot for Finland is fur farming, which you probably all know something. But I'm quite certain that in 10 years we won't have fur farming anymore, but we still have it. So then what would the non-human animals need? I think if we try to look from animal perspective, we would need animal rights recognized more widely. We would need these welfare issues better ensured, which we can do, for example, when we do the legislation, and we should take the scientific knowledge about animals seriously, because it is quite clear in a sense that if we, for example, aim in our law that we want to protect animals from pain, and we have very specific knowledge about that and about how we fail at the moment. So it would be a good for the animals that we as humans would take this new knowledge more seriously. And then we can have different opinions, but these very exploitative practices would end. And then how does this all come? What's the role in this sustainable world? What is the role of animal rights? Well, first of all, I think you are probably quite aware of these issues also already, but basically currently I would argue that because we live in a society where we use other animals so intensively, it's a huge risk for us. Also, of course, it's very violent to the other animals, but it also creates a huge risk. And since the COVID-19 is zoonotic disease, meaning that it is animal origin, and we have gotten it from other animals, such almost all these big epidemic which the humans have encountered now during the last years. They are most often zoonotic diseases, which means that the fact that we are so intensively using other species, it increases the risk of a pandemic. This is something what the animal rights people have said already before COVID-19, but now it's quite, I don't know, clear to everyone that when we use nature, like natural resources and other animals, within that we are creating these kind of risks. and also the other health impacts, of course, which comes with very intensive, let's say, meat-based diet or so. And for example, the antibiotic resistance, it's very, in Finland we use quite, we are quite good at not using antibiotics in the factory farming, but it's in globally it's a huge risk, which probably will get even worse during the coming years. And the big reason is that we are using so much antibiotics for our farm animals. And then I guess you're quite aware of this, that how animal exploitation is one driver of the environmental crisis, is climate change and also biodiversity loss. It's a key driver when we talk about the land use and how much land humans need for our food production or also. And when we use animals as a food, we of course waste a lot of land and energy in terms of, if you compare that we would eat the plant-based food by ourselves, because we need so much is it fodder in English? But we need so much fodder for the farm animals. And these are, of course, not only my opinions. This you can read whatever international science journal or this World Health Organization, the UN, you name it, and they all have given us warnings that this needs to change. If we want to have a sustainable future, it's not compatible with this current system where we use so much animals, that it's just basically environmentally and health-wise and climate-wise, it's a dead end. So anyway, we need to change. And but I want to emphasize that also I think that currently we have huge possibilities. We have all this knowledge which we didn't have before, and maybe we just maybe need to, I don't know, to take it somehow as a baseline that we are part of the nature and we are dependent on nature and we are dependent on other species. So maybe some kind of like coexistence could be possible. For me, when I talk about animal rights, for me it's a part of social justice, because I think we are also socially involved with other animals, and it's a just way to treat them with some kind of like dignity. And I also feel that if we would not accept so much violence towards animals, we would create a less violent societies where you would then have somehow higher step to use violence in general. And of course, we have huge possibilities if we would move from this meat norm to a plant-based food system, and the more regulation. We could do it. We could regulate the use of animals quite easily already within our current legislative system. But of course, we would need to have this this, when I talk about in the beginning that there is like 99% of the Finnish people say in this European survey that we care about animals, and 90% say that we should have better protection. So we would need to have these people's will better taken into account in our law. And so due to these reasons, I think the animal rights is a part of a sustainable future and something which we cannot ignore if we want to create sustainable future. It's also because if we want to somehow act morally, I think we cannot, because of that some individual is other species, we cannot left that moral judgment out. And also because we have this current system is creating, and it's linked to these health and environmental issues, we also cannot ignore the animal rights aspect. So this is my last slide and my key message, which I hope if you would remember something from this talk. My key message would be that by building a more just world for the animals, we are building a better world, not only to them, but for ourselves too. So I put here some links if somebody wants to read or listen or so more about this issue in English. And of course we have good NGOs who work for animal rights. And that's it. Thank you. Now maybe so that I would see you all, maybe I can stop sharing this. Let's see what happens. Yeah, okay. I'm ready for the questions and arguments.
Thank you very much, Mai, for this presentation and these very helpful words. And we really hope in this master to help you in your efforts to build a sustainable and just world.
Oh.
And my name is Laura, and I will be asking the team's questions to you. And then after this, all the participants still have time to drop their questions in the comments section. And my colleague Borgwi will read them. And you can also choose to turn your mics and videos on if you want to ask your questions yourselves. So Borgwi will be in charge of this, but for now, I will ask you a few questions, Mai, on behalf of the team.
Okay.
So I will start with 3 short questions and then ask a longer one. So please bear with it.
Okay.
We have noticed that you have recently signed an initiative to prevent the advertisement of climate damaging services and products in the city of Helsinki. So for example, this concerns meat, air traveling and cars. And we were wondering how close to realization is this initiative now? And what will be the next step for you, mostly for the city of Helsinki?
Okay, so should I start?
Yeah,
or
that's our first question.
Continue?
I will ask the other ones later.
Later, okay, yeah, okay. Then I don't need to pen. I thought you're gonna ask all them once. Okay, so so since I'm also working as a Helsinki City Councillor, this initiative I made as a councillor in Helsinki City Council, and yeah, it basically it's quite new thing in Finland, but I know that, for example, there are cities in Europe which has had this kind of regulations. For example, and of course there is some cities who have banned the outdoor advertising totally. But I know that, for example, in Paris, there are this kind of like that it's not banned totally, but it's restricted. And in Amsterdam, the Amsterdam City Council just made a decision that they want to narrow down the advertisement so that the climate harmful advertisement in terms of climate would be left out. But it's quite new thing there also, so it was just like in the end of last year, and now it's still in the process. So we have had like statements from the Lautakunta. It's like the Urban Environment Committee of Helsinki, and where also politicians sit. So they give a statement, and then the HKL, which is like the Helsinki transportation services or so, basically, which operates the transportation. They had this board meeting, and the both of them, they made statements that okay, that this is something that could be done, not now when the contracts are on place, but when they have a new contract round, like so when they sign the new coming years, then we can make these certain rules there if wanted. And they both committees said that okay, this is a little bit tricky, but it could be done when we negotiate the new for the coming years. So we cannot change the current deals with the advertisers, but when the contract period ends and we start the new one, we could make these kind of rules. Like now we already have this rule in the transportation that you are not allowed to advertise something that is against public transport. so like your advertisement cannot be against public transport. And in the end, if it's unclear, the decision is made by the Helsinki City Transportation. So why I see that this is possible is, first of all, that the outdoor advertising, it's not like something public, it's not a public service that we would need to somehow offer or etc. It's commercial deal with two parties. So basically Helsinki owns the places, so we can do whatever rules we want, but of course we cannot act, we have to have a logical list, and of course it's not very easy to make like a very tight or I don't know, concrete list that what we would let, what you could still advertise and what not. But of course, if you want to be, you can say that there are certain services and products which are the most harmful. Like I used the example of plane travels and fossil fuels industry and so on. So we do this kind of adjustment all the time. In it's not easy to measure the environmental impact either, but we still do it, and we still have the climate programs and so on, even though we work in with information which is not 100% like somehow coherent. Yeah, but so now we are still waiting for the initiative to come, that it will come to council, which will make the final decision. But since we already have quite positive answers or statements from this Urban Environmental Committee and the Transportation Board, so I'm hopeful that we could get like some kind of like decision that okay, we can look for these criteria for the coming years, but but it might be that it will be quite narrow list to these most. But I don't know. It's hard to say, because of course I know that there are many politicians in the Helsinki level that are not that are against it.
Thank you for your answer. I will ask the second set of questions. So if we think about the current COVID situation, there have been speculations about how this was related to what people ate and how it was transmitted through animals. And we were wondering if you think that this has had any impact on the treatment of animals and their hygiene, mostly in the agricultural industries. Is there any better treatment and better hygiene for these animals due to this situation?
Well, yes, I think it like this COVID situation has been quite a hard hit for the animal industry in general. Like if we talk about if you look about the what has happened with fur farming in Europe, there are like many countries which have been in the same situation as us, and I have had very much discussion with the local animal welfare advocates, and now all of a sudden they are in a situation where they have either banned fur farming due to the COVID situation, or they have had the ban for, let's say, so that it would be in place like after 10 years, but they have changed it so that it will be like in the Netherlands, that it will be in place already this year. So they have like not postponed, but make it earlier on place. And I believe that if you look at the statistics, for example, in coming years, that how people see the justification of fur farming, for example, in Finland, I believe that this COVID situation will move more people to have like negative response on continuing the fur farming in Finland, because this is due to the COVID. So it has been, in a sense, I don't know, some kind of a animal rights advocate this situation, when you asked that will it change the measures to be somehow more, maybe the antibiotic resistance will be something that is taken more seriously. And of course, when we are talking a political level, it's about also what kind of who is getting funding and how much funding we channel to what kind of like risks. So I guess that these kind of risks will get more funding when we talk about national finances and international finances, and probably more studies and so on. And yeah, also because at the same time there is a trend, like it's not just it's an ongoing trend that people want to eat less meat. So this will probably also drive that development more.
Hopefully this will happen.
Yeah.
I will now go on with the third question. And we were wondering, in a bit more political aspect, what do you think is the role of citizens in promoting this sustainable future? And as a member of parliament, what do you think is the best means for people to have a lasting influence over national policy regarding specifically animal rights, as this is the topic of today? And also, have you noticed any reaction from the private sector and any room for collaboration maybe with it?
Okay, good question. I think because animals cannot somehow advocate for themselves, so I think it's justified that people do it. And I think the politics, animal rights, it's very easily quite marginal issue in some sense that it's easy to somehow minimize and forget, because I don't know, maybe the advocates are not so powerful, and we have very powerful advocates who advocate, let's say, for the current farming system and so on. But I feel that if you want to influence politics, I feel that this like external pressure is something where you can move politicians. So that we need external, we need like NGOs and people to like very loudly tell their opinion to politicians if they feel that this current, or if they feel that we should do better for the animals. But of course there are also lots of people who have different opinions than I have, and so this is in some sense like debatable, but it's hard because we in politics it's hard to put like this, like I said, that this is something, if we want to have like a sustainable future, this would be something what we just need to take into account. But the day-to-day politics in the parliament, for example, it's really hard to somehow put this concrete price on let's say like sustainable land use and so on, since at the moment we don't have that kind of like price for the over exploitation of animals or nature or so. But yeah, I'm totally in favor of having a lot of external pressure to politicians. And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit losing my voice. I think the business side is something where is already happening a lot. Like there is lots of how would I say this? All this business ideas which it's based on this, like let's say this changing dietary habits, like vegan food and so on. So there's already lots of activities, but we still, the problem is that we would need to transfer our like overall food system in general, and the big driver for that is the agricultural subsidies. So as long as we have these big money flows, which is like sustaining the current production, it's harder for the new businesses to compete with that.
Thank you very much. I will now ask the final question of our team, and we'll let you then answer the question from the audience. So you essentially wrote in your blog about the rights of test animals, and that Finland uses annually around 100,000 animals for testing vaccines and medical treatments, and they cannot be brought to market without being tested. and you proposed a shift to methods that do not use animal testing, but other types of methods that do not cause pain and harm to animals. And we were wondering what type of measures should be done so that we would be able to move from animal testing in Finland to other types of methods, and so what these methods could be. And additionally, what about in cases of acute pandemics, like right now with the COVID-19, do you think that we'll be able to use, and in this type of pandemic situation, what new methods, what alternatives do we have?
Yeah, so this is a good question about animal testing, and like you said, that it's a compulsory part of all medicines and so on. And I don't think that we could I'm not advocating so that we could just end all animal testing like now this day, but because we are somehow, or we feel that we are very reliant on animal testing. But what I want to somehow push forward in politics is that since we already have this, it's called FICAM, and it's in Tampere. You probably actually know it because it's part of Tampere University. But I'm sorry if I check quickly if it has like English name. Yeah, Finnish Center for Alternative Methods, and it's part of Tampere University, and it's something where, like in this, when we had the governmental negotiations 2 years ago, we negotiated more money to that kind of practices through FICAM, because in order to build some kind of like alternative testing methods field, you need, of course, like political support and resources and so on. And FICAM has done a very good work in Finland. And I said in this blog also that because Finland is quite a high-tech country and with quite high, I don't know what it's called, but that we have this kind of like, that we could be somehow flagship country for this kind of like alternative methods. And now there are many alternatives, but I don't know if I know the words in English, because it's basically like using computers and modeling and cellular like cells where you use so I don't know the English words, but anyway, you have these methods which already, of course, now when we are testing some let's say medicine or so, it's not so that you test it with animal and then you are like, okay, now we are good, and then you can start using it with humans. So you anyway need to have multiple methods, and you anyway, in the end, you have the people who you test them in the first time. So in the blog, I also told that, for example, MS disease, we already have created like over 1,000 medicines that work for rats and their MS disease, but none of them works with us humans. So I criticize also the fact that, because even though you would get a certain result with a sheep or a rat or fish or so, in the end, it doesn't give you the information how it will work with people. But I feel this like modeling and cellular-based methods would be more reliable also. Yeah.
Thank you very much for taking the time to answer our questions. And I will now give the floor to my teammate Poppy to ask you the questions from the audience.
Okay.
I have some problem. Yes, thank you, Mai, for answering our questions. It's really nice to have you presenting the topic about animal rights. And also I have observed that we have a very active conversation in our chat, and I have selected some questions for you. And the first question is just related to our colleague's question from Laura, and it's asking, will there be any change in law that come up to tackle with the laboratory animal text? If so, and how this will impact the scientific development?
Okay, thank you. So I think it was 1 year ago when we last time made some adjustments to our law on scientific experiments with animals, but it was mostly quite technical changes and some changes what comes from the EU law. So our law is based on the EU directive about animal experiments, and of course we have like stated in the whole of EU that our aim is to end animal testing. So it's a European-wide or European Union-wide written like aim that we want to get rid of animal testing. And last time we adjusted the law, and there were a little bit quite minor, like I said, minor changes. And I don't have any knowledge that we would be changing the law anymore during this term. So I would say that if we want to have a say on animal testing, I would say that the best way now would be that we support these alternative methods, because we of course have a field of scientists and researchers and people who work with these alternative methods, and I think it would be really good to support those methods to have more mainstream, because currently I used to work, when I was working with Animalia, I was part of this board about who met, like all the people who worked with animal testing met, and we were having this national board. And also one problem is that there are like scientists whom they have only learned that if you do scientific research, you need to use animals in order to have it like a serious science, in a sense, if you are working in that kind of field. And now it's also a little bit like changing the mindset of these fields, that hey, it's also possible to make sound science with less animals and so on. And of course there are other problems also, like that they have, like, let's say we have lots of different companies who make multiple tests, like the same tests, because they are not open and so on. We could like reduce the amount of animal tests if we would just, let's say, share the results and so on. But I don't think that we will end animal tests very soon, and I understand why it's not an easy topic, and why it can be argued that we get they might be like somehow more useful to us than other things where we use animals. Like one can say that it's easier to drop animals from your plate than from the science, but also I feel that there are lots of unnecessary tests, and there are lots of tests which we could have even more reliable results with these other methods.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, if we have choice not to do harm, then we should reduce the harm as possible. But what if in the case that we don't have a choice? For example, how do you see the conflict between human rights and animal rights? For example, if there's a fair solution to solve conflict, like if rats are spreading virus that's threatening humans' health, and also the wild rabbits are destroying the farm plant, and how can we handle this case in a just manner?
Yeah, it's not easy, and I don't say that I wouldn't be, but I would be somehow objective, because I feel that maybe we all have this. I don't know if it's a bias, or maybe it's a human thing that you. It's like, how could I say it, but of course, like if we talk about human rights, for example, at the moment we are putting, let's say in Finland, we give greater value to Finnish lives than we give to people who are not living in Finland or are not our citizens. If you talk about how we distribute the COVID medicines, it's very unfair. But then we are like we favor people who are more close to ourselves. But I don't know if it's morally right thing to do. It's quite humane that if you have to take care of your own loved ones, you probably are not 100% objective if you would need to choose that who do you save, your own child or someone who you don't know or so. But in a way, our like international human rights law doesn't state that, hey, some people are more valuable than others, but in practice we do it all the time. We do it in a national level and etc., and we'll do it in our personal lives.
It's all about trade-offs.
Sorry?
It's all about trade-offs in this time.
Yeah, exactly. So with animals, I think it's understandable that people treat or somehow wouldn't think that, okay, all animals are equal to humans, because yeah, so it's harder to relate. But I think we should like wait on this, like that when there is a situation where we actually like we could give more weight on animal rights. For example, if I try to be like very simple, like if it's not necessary for humans to do something which is very harmful for animals, should we then weight the animal rights more? But if you have to choose your like own life and someone, of course, then it's like and like you said, what is quite good example, I think, with the pests. If you can say that, okay, for self-protection, if you want to protect your own property or so, it's more understandable. But I people usually make this with animal rights, but I want to say that this is how our legal system is working all the time. You know, that we wait that okay, there is some person who wants to make a business, and then there is a freedom of speech, and then there is a let's say traffic, like we know that people are getting killed every year due to traffic, but we don't ban all the cars because some people will get killed, because we think that okay, as a society in whole, it's a risk what we or the right to live, it's not taken so fundamentally that we would like we would really ban, for example, the cars, or you know, it's all the time we have to do this adjustment, and hospitals are doing this kind of like that, okay, who gets treatment and how much money we use in what kind of diseases, what kind of, in the politics we do this all the time, that when we allocate resources, so I think with animal rights also, it's not that we either give all animals right to live and not be somehow affected by humans 100%, or then we continue like it is now. And yeah, I think these kind of situations where people would protect their own health or their own home or so, it's much more understandable that we would restrict the animal rights.
Yes, I see that's not an easy question to make a balance. And do you think that the new animal welfare law will come up soon and hopefully helping to change situation like this?
Where the law which we are now making, it will be better than the current law, but it's not animal rights law, or so it will have some kind of like better adjustments and so on, but it even after we have done the new animal welfare law, I will think that it's not good enough. So I'm a little bit sad actually that we are now in the government, but we cannot do as good law for animals than I would want to, and I would see that there is a need. But there will be like, of course, there are no proposal yet, but we had when we had the parliament or the governmental negotiations, the governmental program, or what is it called, hallitusohjelma. So there we already had the negotiations about what will be included in the new Animal Welfare Act. So there will be like, let's say that we are banning certain kinds of crates or cages, but not all. We are banning the dolphin areas, but not all entertainment, and we are making this identification marking and registration for cats and dogs, and it's very helpful thing for to prevent the illegal pet trade, or what would be the English word, and so on. So there will be like good things, but I'm still disappointed, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I understand that it's very difficult to make a law that satisfies everyone, And if so, do you think that the public can do something? Like, would you give us some suggestion that to raise the awareness about animal rights, since we are still seeing those contradictions in our daily practice? Like, although people are saying that, oh, we love animals, we care about them, but they're continuing the exploitation, like they're consuming the animal clothing, and also it also reflects on the food choice as well.
Yeah, I think the best way is to a little bit change what is seen as normal, change the norm. So that's why I have been very willing to affect on, for example, the food choices that our public services are doing, like let's say the schools and kindergartens and so on, because when there are almost all people who will grow up here in Finland, they are in these institutions, and what they see there as normal food, for example, they will be socialized in a certain kind of food. So I have felt like now in Helsinki we made this decision that we will decrease by 50% the animal products, and I feel that it can be very good, because then maybe the students don't even realize that there is a very big all of a sudden change, but the content will still change. And so I think like if you talk about milk, do you mean oat milk or cow's milk? And if you what kind of if you go to a cafeteria, if is it the normal thing that the plant-based milk is there for everyone, and you have to ask if you want to have the cow's milk, or you know these kind of situations I think are the best way to change, because then like there can be like a certain percentage who are like actively changing things, and then there are the small amount of people who are actively resisting the change, but then all the rest, they just how do I say, adjust, and then you can change the things when you just do like, for example, your university. I'm sure you all have lots of power in terms of affecting what is normal in your meetings, in your what is your student cafeteria and so on, and your of course our personal lives, that what kind of choices we make. So I think that is probably the like biggest way to influence. And of course if you mobilize, or how would I say, if you like come together with other people, will it be in NGOs or will it be in the party politics that you vote or even run for yourself? Now there is still chance to be a candidate in the municipality elections.
Yes.
So anyway, like the majority of the people maybe don't want to influence, so then you have even more power if you
to lead the social change.
Yeah, exactly. And you
Thank
can
you
do
very
it
much for
in your
answering our
personal
questions.
life.
Okay, so the questions were really good from the audience, and even better, your answers were great. You very well could answer all the really tough questions that there was. And anyway, thank you, Mai, for your important and really interesting lecture. It was a pleasure to have you, and I must say that personally, I enjoyed it a lot. This is a really important topic. And also I want to thank the audience, and not to forget my dear and valuable group, because it was a nice thing to organize as well. And yeah, this was the last LFC lecture this year, and please remember to check the blog posts from this and the prior lectures, and I will provide the link in the chat. But Mai, thank you really, really much. It was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for wanting to have a discussion and talk about this issue. It was also meaningful for me.
Good. Thank you.
I will wish you all the good spring and coming studies, and so even though it's a quite hard time for all of us.
Thank you so much.
Mm. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.